All right, welcome back to Q-Tips. This is the final recap of the week one regular season. We're going to do the late games. Just like I said in the other videos, remember, 1 week sample size. This is just the first week. Don't overreact. Don't make, grand assumptions from 1 week. Most sports play series. The NFL only plays one game, even for the playoffs, which makes it very exciting, which makes results very exciting and makes really anything possible. Because in one game, anybody can win. But in a series, usually the better teams are going to win. So just remember that when you remember with the NFL, any team can win because it's a 1 game sample size. And week one is a 1 game sample size. And this Sunday, only the unders, 11 out of 13 unders hit. And I'm not talking about that for gambling. I'm not saying you should have bet this way, you should have bet that way. I'm just saying that's how low scoring in general the NFL is because it usually starts. The offenses are behind the defense. There's more moving parts to offense. There's more things that need to be learned. There's more things that need to work. So a lot of times, the beginning of the year, since NFL teams don't really play preseason anymore, the offenses usually don't score as much as they would normally. So just remember that. So when some of your fantasy teams didn't do as well as you thought, overall, scoring was just down in general. 11 out of 13 unders hit. 11 out of 13 games went under. I'm going to start at the end, actually. I'm going to start Monday Night Football just because it was an exciting game. It ended up being an exciting game. The Bears versus the Vikings. J.J. McCarthy's first game playing. Caleb Williams' first game with Ben Johnson. They were both picked in the draft last year. Caleb Johnson went 1 overall. J.J. McCarthy, some of them questioned that pick. He got hurt preseason, didn't even play a down of football last year. But he does have the best offensive coach, definitely the best quarterback offensive coach in the league right now. I would argue that he is the best offensive coach currently in the league. He does a lot. Kevin O'Connell does a lot for the quarterbacks. He is a quarterback whisperer, and that's not term used lightly. He really does work on that. He was a backup quarterback himself in the NFL for a long time, and he knew what failed him, and he saw what worked him getting people prepared to play. So he really does have quite a system. That game started out all Bears. First drive, Caleb Williams went 6 for 6. Touchdown drive, first scripted plays, looked amazing. Everybody thought the Ben Johnson, Caleb Williams era had started. After that, it was not so good. Next 9 drives, they only kicked a field goal. Next offensive 9 drives, the Bears had kicked 1 field goal in those, and then they did score a touchdown late. It was a little out of hand by then because they were up 2 scores, so it was a softer defense. But, they did make it look better. J.J. McCarthy made a mistake, threw a pick 6. So the Bears scoring looked better than it was. They looked like they were in control of that game the whole time. They looked like they were going to win most of that game. It looked like, almost a Bears homecoming game, which, would have been fun. But J.J. McCarthy thought otherwise. J.J. McCarthy started to turn it on in the fourth quarter. He scored 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. Well, the Vikings scored 3 touchdowns in the third quarter. The Bears defense was playing very well. That was a little suspect at the end there, but I would almost say it was just better coaching. J.J. McCarthy started figuring out what Kevin O'Connell was trying to help him do. And, he was a little late at first. A lot of times they were coming out of the huddle late. They were taking it all the way down. They were almost not getting the snaps off at first. I felt like at first it was a lot of logistics for J.J. McCarthy's first game. He was getting used to that. He was getting used to the speed of the game and all that. But once he settled down, he looked wonderful. Caleb also had moments of looking wonderful, but he also didn't look as in rhythm as JJ did by the end. He wasn't throwing much up the middle, and Ben Johnson's offenses usually have a lot of seam routes and stuff over the middle. Caleb seemed to hold onto the ball a lot. He was actually checked down the third highest of the week, percentage-wise. And, that's not exactly what Ben Johnson's offense is all about. It's more about running the plays that are designed. I think overall it was a decent day for Caleb Williams. It was better than what they were last year. However, the Ben Johnson experience is going to take some time. The offensive line isn't fixed yet, but offensive lines, like most teams, they take some time to gel. They take some time to come together. I will say at the end of the game, Ben Johnson was outcoached. There was 2 minutes and 2 seconds left when they scored at the end. And really, Caleb Williams had a bad throw. He could have scored with DJ Moore with about 2 minutes and 30 seconds left, which would have been a big difference. However, he overthrew that ball by a lot, because if he connected there, they would have kicked the ball off. They would have been able to take the timeout on the front of the 2-minute warning and then also get the 2-minute warning. They would have got the ball back in that situation with almost a minute left, where if they had scored, and then when they did score, they had they would have had a minute and 2 seconds left. And when they did score, they had 2 minutes and 2 seconds left. So they were on the front side of the 2-minute warning. The Bears should have kicked the ball out of bounds. Some people said the kicker should have kicked it out of the back of the end zone. If it was that easy, then he would have probably done that. But he could have just kicked it straight left, and it would have went right out of bounds. They would have took the penalty. It wouldn't have mattered, but it would have not used any time. So then the Vikings would have ran a play. The 2-minute warning would have happened, and then the Bears would have still had a timeout. So instead of getting the ball back with 15 seconds like they did, they would have had 45 seconds down 3, which would have been a very different game. It would have actually been a good chance for Caleb to actually come back. But since Ben Johnson did not do that, he kicked the ball in the end zone, and obviously Kevin O'Connell, being a smart coach, made sure that ball came out so they got on the other side of the 2-minute warning, which essentially wasted 45 seconds of game time. So those are just little things, little game managements that you can't do that at the NFL level. I'm not saying the Bears would have won because they were still down, but they would have at least had a chance, unless, O'Connell might have got a little more aggressive, because then if you have the 2 seconds on the front of the 2-minute warning, it's essentially you could pass there. So you don't have to actually hand it off, because you're going to use 2 seconds on a pass play or a run. So, there's always circumstances, but it was the wrong play by Ben Johnson. You at least had to kick it out of bounds. So that game ended up being very exciting. Coming back, both primetime games were really good this weekend. But, both those teams are looking up. I just think Kevin O'Connell is one of the best coaches in the league right now. I believe he deserves that, and he really has shown, with all the different quarterbacks he's gone through, his ability to really put together an offense. With Ben Johnson, it's still going to be wait and see. I think he's good, but we will see. The next, I put this in here because technically it was 1:00 game, but with the lightning delay, the Panthers and the Jaguars ended up really finishing in the later window. And since how the games were split, it was just easier to review it this way. The Panthers do not look good. I'm not surprised. I said in our previews, Bryce Young does not look like an NFL quarterback to me. Like last year, he was the worst quarterback. They benched him. They brought him back. He went from being the worst quarterback in the league to about the 22nd ranked quarterback in the league, and everybody had talked about him all offseason like he took this step forward. I was like, he went from a not playable quarterback to a bottom third quarterback. Like, he still wasn't good. He still wasn't looking that good, especially not for a first overall pick. He looked really bad in this game. I saw a statistic where he was not pressured. He was the worst against non-pressure. So when no one was coming after him, he was the worst quarterback. He could not operate the offense. He got bailed out. He threw a horrible pick six. It got called back on a defensive hold that had nothing to do with the play. I'm not saying it wasn't a defensive hold, but it had no effect on the play. It was done by a defensive player against an offensive player that was not in the play. He threw a horrendous ball. That should have been a pick six. And then after that, when they got it called back, they ended up getting a garbage time touchdown to make it look a little bit more presentable. But the Panthers do not look good. The same problems last year. They cannot stop the run. Travis Etienne ran all over them, 170 plus yards. They are going to be a run funnel. So next week they have the Cardinals. James Conner, load him up, get him in your fantasy lineups. James Conner is in for a big day. The thing about the Jaguars, though, Jaguars looked okay. For the first week they looked good. Liam Cohen doing his thing, using his running backs. That looked good. Everybody was excited Travis Hunter was going to be a full-time receiver leading into the game, which he was, but he was a full-time slot receiver. Probably not as much work as everybody wanted in fantasy. However, Trevor Lawrence had his ups and downs. Trevor Lawrence, they won the game. He looked okay at times. He missed a lot of throws still, though. And for being a veteran quarterback at this point, and he was a first pick overall, you want to see him take a step forward. Hopefully he can. Hopefully this was just that first week. He's still figuring out this offense. But there were just some not even bad decisions. There were some poor thrown balls there, which that's what you don't like to see, because he's supposed to be this talent with this arm, and he's still missing throws. It does look like Travis Etienne and Bajal Tutin are the running backs. So if you're looking for a deeper stash in fantasy, Bajal Tutin, if he's not picked up, because they did trade Tank Bigsby to the Eagles for a couple picks, mutual for both sides, it looks like. But I think that means they have confidence in Travis Etienne, and they also have confidence in Bajal Tutin. So if you're looking for that. But I think the Jaguars looked good. They took care of business. They did exactly what they're supposed to do. I believe the Panthers are probably one of the 3 worst teams in the NFL, if not the worst. So I don't see that changing this year, but we will see. Next game, Broncos-Titans. 2 great defenses. This was a defensive battle. A lot of people forget how good the Titans defense is. The Titans defense, second half of last year, the Titans were not a good team overall. Second half of last year, that defense was a top 10 defense for the second half of last year. It shut down people. It's ferocious. It attacks you. It gets after the quarterback. And nobody leading up to this game was talking about that defense. Everyone just, now they're all talking about Bo Nix didn't have a great fantasy game. That's going to be one of the tougher defenses he sees. I don't understand this. They didn't even need to bring pressure. They were rushing with 4 most of the game and getting home. That game was very sloppy. And I don't even want to say sloppy, because the defenses were playing very well. It was a defensive battle. It was an old school looking game. Both those, like I said, the offenses are usually behind the defenses, but those defenses are very good. And, the Titans may be an option to stream for fantasy in defenses. Just keep an eye on that. For the first start for Cam Ward, for being the least talked about first overall pick of quarterback ever, he had a good day. He played well. That defense is probably the worst spot start for a rookie quarterback to ever be put in. That Denver Broncos defense, for that to be your first start, is extremely difficult. And yes, he didn't have a lot of big plays. They lost. But Cam Ward didn't look lost out there. And there were some quarterbacks this week that looked lost. Cam Ward at least did not look lost. You're always going to want to throw a few throws back. They do have a rookie wide receiver, Io Manor. He's getting some play. So if you're real deep in fantasy, that's a player to look out for. I will say Calvin Ridley dropped a couple balls that didn't help. That doesn't help Cam Ward. That's kind of in the models. Calvin Ridley's normally going to drop a couple balls. However, I do believe that Titans team is going to take a step forward this year. I believe that. Like I said, the Panthers team, about the same, going backwards. I think the Titans are going to take a step forward this year. The Broncos, everybody was really high on Bo Nix. they had a very easy schedule last year. They did not play a lot of good quarterbacks. Anytime they did play a good quarterback, the defense gave up some points. But they won a lot of games they were supposed to win last year, which is, that's what NFL teams are supposed to do. However, and they won this game. Bo Nix didn't look great, but they did everything they needed. He missed a lot of plays. There were a lot of plays where people were wide open, and he did not see that. Sean Payton drew up an amazing fourth down, two crossers. Courtland Sutton was just running free, and he threw it to the other. He threw it to the other side. That was double teamed. There were a lot of bad plays. However, there were a lot of open guys up there, and I'm sure Sean Payton can coach him up, show him what he did wrong, and I think Bo Nix will be fine. Now, people were drafting him like he was going to be the 5th or 6th best fantasy quarterback. He's not running like he did last year. He ran a lot at the beginning of last year, and as the year went on, he ran less as he got more comfortable with the offense. I believe this year he's going to run even less, getting more comfortable with the offense. Not saying he can't, not saying he won't, but I don't believe he's going to return the value of what a lot of people paid for him in fantasy football. I believe both these offenses will look better throughout the year, and I think that was a really tough game to start with. Those defenses are both legit, and next week, they have the Colts. Colts were just like the hottest team in the league this first week. We will see what they look like against Denver. Next game, Rams-Texans. This was another defensive game, even with all the offensive stars in this game. This was another defensive game. The Rams' defense is good. Jared Verse, they have some young talent. They were playing very well. The Texans' offensive line is still garbage. They were not good. They made all these moves, but sometimes just changing names doesn't actually mean you're getting better. They did a lot of things on the offensive line, and that doesn't necessarily mean you're getting better. They had C.J. Stroud had the most pressure against him in just 4-man sets. So I'm saying when just 4 guys were blitzing, not even blitzing, just rushing, he had the most pressure against him. That's all offensive line. That's not good. You can't operate. NFL teams, it does not matter who the offense is, they cannot operate if they're not protected. Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, whenever they would struggle was when they were not protected. There is no offense in the NFL that can run effectively without time, without blocking, without being able to produce plays. And the offensive line is where all that comes from. The offensive line is wildly important and underrated in the NFL. I do believe C.J. Stroud to Nico Collins will be fine. Everyone's a little, upset about that because he didn't get a lot of targets and catches. But like I said, this was also a defensive struggle. That Rams team was playing good defense. I believe next week Nico Collins will be fine. I believe the Texans offense will get better. I don't know if they're going to get to where everybody was hoping. There were some people picking them to win the Super Bowl. I don't think the offensive line is gelling that much. But we will see. And C.J. Stroud made some poor throws as well. C.J. Stroud had some bad decisions. Now, when you feel like you're running for your life all the time and, that gets in the back of your head. So maybe some of that was because the pressure was always there. The Titans have a very good pass rush. And sometimes, it's almost happy feet. Like C.J. Stroud could feel all that pressure. So sometimes that could have been what it was because the Rams really did play well. They have a great D-line. Kyren Williams got all the work for the Rams running backs, which was great because some people talked, Blake Corum might have a role. I feel like they always love to say something weird about Kyren Williams a week before the season starts. Last year it was he's going to return punts and sent Fantasy World in a frenzy. This year it was Blake Corum is going to be more involved. Through week 1, none of that was true. Puka Nacua is Puka Nacua. He is just a target hawk. He's a ball hawk. He's going to be like, he's getting fed like Cooper Kupp did in Cooper Kupp's Triple Crown year. The only thing is, will they survive? Like Matthew Stafford with a broken back. You never had a good back and it got better. You just have back problems. That doesn't go away. Puka Nacua is like Braveheart out there. Every, 3rd drive he's bleeding and he just plays so hard. You would think, maybe take it a little bit easier to try to stay healthy. But again, you can't that's what makes him him. But it is for a fantasy owner, it's stressful to watch because he plays football with no regard for his body. So it's similar to how Tua was with the Dolphins offense and Achane last year. Like, it's not just Puka Nacua needs to stay healthy. Stafford has to stay healthy for his fantasy value. And as much as I would love to see that, I mean, this is the NFL. I don't believe Stafford looked healthy enough to survive 17 games. There were quite a few players like that. Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers. A lot of those guys do not look like they're going to survive 17 games. But with that being said, I mean, as long as they're healthy, the Rams are legit. The defense is great. The offense works. Stafford can throw the ball. They didn't have the best offensive game. They really didn't. That defense won that game. But they won. That's what that's what matters. And as long as Stafford and Puka Nacua can stay healthy, the fantasy team's going to be just all right. And if somehow they do make it all the way through, the Rams are going to be a team to reckon with. Like, they're one of the teams that could win the Super Bowl if everybody stays healthy. I just think that health is going to be, sadly, a big detriment to them. The next game, 49ers versus the Seahawks, another divisional game. This game was interesting. The 49ers, I thought, actually looked very good until everybody just kept dropping out. It was like they went through a war. I thought the 49ers actually looked very well. The kicker, not so much. He's actually already been let go, which is not surprising because he missed 12 of 20 kicks to end the season last year, and that just went right into this year. He missed a PAT. He missed an extra point. He missed 2 field goals. It was like they should have been up multiple points in this game, and they kept having to come back. And then at the end, they were so nervous to even kick a field goal, it was forcing Shanahan to go for it when he probably wouldn't have. In the long run, though, the Niners did win the game. I felt like the Niners were the better team that day. They should have. The Seahawks did not look Sam Darnold did not look like he did with Kevin O'Connell and the Vikings. I think coaching matters. I'm not saying he looked awful. I'm not saying he looked like Sam Darnold of the Jets, but he did not look like the Sam Darnold of the Vikings. And it's still early. Maybe that changes. He had a very bad fumble at the end because he got pressure. He didn't see it. The Niners made a play, and I believe Robert Saleh matters for the Niners defense. Robert Saleh is a great defensive coach. The Jets defense was never the problem. When they fired him, it was because Aaron Rodgers' ego was hurt and they needed a scapegoat. And that defense stopped playing after Robert Saleh got fired last year with the Jets. But I believe those coaches, the head coaches that get fired and go back to coordinators, there was usually a reason why they got the head coaching job, because they were great coordinators. So I believe that 49ers defense is going to surprise people. It looked good. It looked really good against the Seahawks. The Seahawks have some talent. They're a good team. They have a good offensive line. That's what matters. So the Niners, though, they're cursed. I don't know what deal Shanahan made with what devil or what hex they have on them, but that team cannot stay healthy. They came out of that game. George Kittle's on IR. He's out for at least a month. Jawan Jennings was in and out, banged up. They don't know if he's going to play. The day after, we get reports that Purdy might be hurt. He finished the game. Nobody even knew that. So it's crazy. I mean, somehow Christian McCaffrey survives, though, and everyone talks about, they need to work him less. They need to do that. Shanahan gave McCaffrey more touch, like a top 5 in his touches that he's ever had. I think it was like 32 touches that game. So Shanahan can't help himself. If McCaffrey's out there, Shanahan's going to work him. So as long as McCaffrey's out there, you got a fantasy stud. And the big thing is now it might be Mac Jones is the backup for Brock Purdy, who, supposedly that was who Shanahan actually wanted to draft when he drafted Trey Lance. But, it is what it is. I'm hoping Purdy's fine, not just personally because I have him in a good amount of fantasy leagues. It helps all those guys, all those 49ers. Ricky Pearsall looked like a real number one. I think I think Ricky Pearsall looked good. I think Ricky Pearsall could easily be the number one for them. You would like to see Jennings at least out there because you want him to have some weapons out there. It's getting bleak already. Trent Williams, the best offensive lineman in the league, arguably, was in and out of that game as well. And when the Niners don't have him out there, it's like similar to the Lane Johnson stats with the Eagles and other elite offensive linemen. They usually don't win when he's not healthy, when he's not out there. So we want to see Trent Williams out there. And then the Seahawks, Zach Charbonnet looked great. I mean, he might have just Wally pipped Ken Walker. We'll see. He looked great. He looked more spry. He was doing everything. He was about the high point. Jackson Smith-Njigba was getting all the targets. He actually had a bad drop though too. But he'll be great in fantasy. He was getting all the targets. Cooper Kupp ran 100% of pass routes and got 2 catches. It's not good. But like I said, I think the Niners defense is better than what everybody else thinks. So if Cooper Kupp's out there running 100% of the pass routes, he's going to have some days where he does fine. But it was disappointing to see that. The coach, McDonald, the Seahawks had it late. It was 4th and inches, and they elected to kick a field goal. And it's just not good football anymore. You have to go for that. You have to try to get that first down, because if you keep going and you end up scoring the touchdown, the game is over. Essentially, if you kick that field goal, you did exactly what the 49ers wanted you to do, because what you're doing is you're giving them the ball back. And they did exactly what you didn't want them to do. You kicked the field goal, you went up 3, they got the ball back, they went and they scored the touchdown. They actually missed the extra point because that guy Moody missed everything that day. So they were only up 3. And then the Seahawks did have a chance to score or to score or tie either way. Sam Darnold got strip sacked though, and that was the end of the game. It was won by the defense. The last game, I mean, maybe the game of the year, definitely game of the week. Honestly, could be game of the year, week 1. It was Ravens versus the Bills. This game had everything. It had the Ravens looking like a juggernaut, which is nothing new. The Ravens have been the best team in the NFL this will be probably the 3rd year in a row, roster-wise and regular season-wise. I know they lose games here and there that they shouldn't, and especially in the playoffs, but if you go by DVOA and statistics and success rate, the fact that their offense and defense is some of the most successful, had the highest success rates ever for teams. 2 years ago, it was the highest success rate for offense and defense. They were 1 in both, and they still lost in the playoffs to the Chiefs. Last year, they lost to the playoffs by the Bills, and it was the same reason, turnovers. Everybody talked about Mark Andrews dropping the ball at the end of the game in the playoff game. No, Lamar Jackson threw 2 horrible picks earlier in that game. You can't just take the last play and make that be the whole narrative. If Lamar Jackson didn't throw those 2 interceptions early, the Ravens were probably just running that game out with Derrick Henry late last year, and they were probably going to go play the Chiefs, which who knows, they could have blown that, but they should have won the Bills game. And then the year before that, they lost to the Chiefs in a heartbreaking manner in the playoffs. And then again, they start last year, week 1, at the Chiefs. Isaiah Likely steps on the line. They lose in a heartbreak. Last year, they lost to the Bills, a heartbreak. This year, they start the new year, same team, playing the Bills, losing heartbreak. And I will say last year when they lost to the Chiefs, everyone was all over them the next week because they were playing the Raiders. Oh, bounce back game. Everybody put them in their suicide pools. Well, they lost to the Raiders the next week. So if you're picking them to just blow through the Browns, which is they will most likely do, but just remember, if you're picking them in your suicide pools, they did do this last year and then blew it again the next week and really knocked out a lot of people from suicide pools. However, I will say the Ravens are amazing. Their team is amazing. Their defense is amazing. Their offense is amazing. I mean, Derrick Henry was the best player out there for a while until he fumbled. The Ravens lost because they had 1 turnover. The Bills had none. Sometimes football is that simple. It's crazy, but it's that simple sometimes. Neither team was really stopping each other in that game. There were momentary stalls, but those teams were just going back and forth on each other. The Derrick Henry was running all over him. The Bills decided to stop the run. They started stacking the box, and then Zay Flowers just got free. Like, the Ravens have every answer. They're similar to the Eagles in that situation where they have players at every level. Whatever the defense is going to give them, they can take advantage of. The Ravens also, I mean, Lamar Jackson is just he's one of a kind. I mean, the plays he made were one of a kind. However, it felt like a regular season game until about midway through the fourth quarter. When Derrick Henry fumbled that ball, it then felt like a playoff game, because that was how the Ravens lose playoff games. I mean, first three quarters, everybody on the Ravens is happy. You see Derrick Henry smiling on the sideline. That fumble happens, and you can tell the whole demeanor of the whole team on the sideline completely changes. Everyone's stone-faced. Everyone's, tight. They're nervous. You can see Derrick Henry on the sideline, obviously angry with himself, but the whole demeanor of the team completely changes. And then, the Bills score. They get the ball back. They score again. They stop them. Everyone's talking about the Ravens should have went for it on fourth down. I agree with it. You should have, but you also shouldn't have ran it on first down like the Chargers did against the Chiefs when they knew that last time they got the ball, they knew they needed a first down to finish it. And instead of just handing it off three times to, quote unquote, kill the clock, they threw the ball on first down. They got a first down. And then they had enough time to run, and they made another play to ice the game. If they knew that if the Bills got the ball back, it was game over. You have an MVP caliber quarterback, you don't want to give it to the other MVP caliber quarterback. So I believe the Ravens should have went for it on fourth down, but I think they should have been more aggressive on first and second. I think they should have thrown the ball on first and then run it on second, and then you keep it in Lamar Jackson's hands on third, because you're probably at third and short at worst by then. And then when it's fourth and short, you actually absolutely keep it, because a field goal is already going to lose you the game. You had your timeouts. It just made more sense to go for it, because if you didn't get it, you still had to you still had to just hold them to a field goal. If you didn't hold them to a field goal, the game was over either way. So you needed to hold them to a field goal, and then you get the ball back and have time. Where what you did was you punted it, they wasted all the time, and they had a chip shot to win the game. Now the Bills, it was the Bills are the Bills. It's all Josh Allen. They have enough players around him that are good. Nobody is amazing, but they have a good offensive line, and their defense is opportunistic. They don't have the best defense out there, but they do have a defense that'll make plays. Dion Dawkins getting the strip sack. He's got big fumbles. He's got big sacks. He's got, big plays. Sometimes that's all you need out of your defense. They don't need to hold them to 12 points every week, but when they get opportunities, they make big plays. And then Josh Allen is just supernatural. It's all Josh Allen. They got rid of Stephon Diggs because they wanted a more lateral wide receiver core. They have guys that can kind of do everything. They complement each other. They have multiple running backs that can do different things. So Josh doesn't have to force feed anybody. Josh can just do whatever the offense is giving him or whatever the defense is giving him. And if the defense isn't giving him anything, he can just run it himself, because you can't stop everything. So, that game was crazy. That was by far probably the best game of the year it's going to be. It felt like the Chiefs-Rams game, 55 to 51 or whatever, a few years ago. It just felt like we were watching two of the best quarterbacks to ever play. And it was just exciting, and it was a lot of fun. That was week one. It was an exciting week. We waited so long for it. It was great. Everything was, do not overreact is all I have to say. Some teams are going to get better. Offenses are definitely going to get better. And if you drafted players that didn't work out, give them time. You drafted them for a reason. Remember that. But that's all I got for week one. Thanks for listening.